Yeah, I mean, we're still more horizontal from a use case. Like I said, I think my beef with like vertical AI is like more of it's like a different type of thing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with like having a vertical AI, but
I'm your host Vishesh, building Neo voice control for your entire computer. No typing, no clicking. Curious? Check out Vishesh.space. I am joined today by Will Bodewes, founder and CEO at Phonely. Phonely uses AI to answer business phone calls so naturally that 9 out of 10 callers can't tell it's not human. They just raised 16 million and one of their customers replaced 350 agents in a single month. Hey, hi, Will. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. Do you want to tell a little bit about Phonely and what do you guys do? What's the grandma version? How would you pitch this to your grandma?
grandma version. Well, yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. Really excited to be here. For a little bit of background about Phonely, for those that don't know, and for the grandma version, very simply put, we make it easy for businesses to answer their phones with AI that sounds like a person. So instead of having a receptionist or a call center, you can use a voice agent that answers your phone. For a little bit more complicated version, what we allow you to do is we allow you to optimize that AI agent so that it can get better at your outcomes. So, for example, let's say that you have a business that you need to schedule appointments on, whether
Mm.
that's healthcare, whether that's you know, a dentist, whether it's a plumber, whatever. You really care that that AI, just like you'd really care that that receptionist does a good job at actually scheduling those appointments. And so we have statistically the best voice agent at optimizing for your outcomes. So we can learn, it can get better, and then you get to see all the data so you can make informed decisions to do that. So we're valuable for small businesses, but we're really valuable for large organizations and businesses at a lot of scale that are trying to say, how do I improve my conversion rates through the phone as a channel? Make sense?
Makes sense. And so I read somewhere your dad runs a veterinary clinic and he was your first customer or a test customer, or did you guys use V1 on him?
Yeah. So he was a lot of the inspiration for why we ended up, picking this idea to work on. We knew we wanted to work in AI. This was like when we started working on this, LLMs were not doing function calling yet, right? I was in my PhD and I was figuring out what were the opportunities out there. My dad was a veterinarian, and I was like, "What's your big problems?" And he said, "Well, hiring people to answer the phone." And turns out that that problem was not solved at the time. And I still think that, so now it's getting pretty close to solved, but there's a lot of room that can be done to optimize it, right? So we started working on that because it felt like a really valuable thing. Whereas like chat or texting, it's a multi one, but a voice is always one to one. You need to have another person on the line talking to you. Whereas chat, you can like chat with one person, chat with another person. So we wanted to work on that. And it also felt like there was a big frontier, a lot of work to be done to make it really valuable.
And so your first customer or sale was $7 a month return on a pizza box. What was the first sale like and how did you end up making that sale?
It took me about 2 hours to close that sale. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was we had gotten a Facebook ad or Phonely in like for vet, I think it was vet AI phone answer. She was not a veterinarian at all, but I called her up and I talked to her about, "Hey, this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah." And I think by the end of it, she just got so sick of me talking to her that she was like, "All right, fine. I'll pay for your product." So then she was like, I'll $7 a month. I can do that. So we didn't have a way to actually process payments. So then we wrote it down on the pizza box. Then it was like, she didn't end up becoming a good customer for us, but it was the first payment. And I was like, okay, well, we should probably get payments figured out. And then later that week, we closed like a $30 a month subscription, then a $150 subscription, then like a $500. And those became our early test bed of customers that we actually relied on.
And so that first pricing, was it like pulled out of thin air or a number that you would just stick and try or
Yeah,
did
I mean, you have some rough ideas. There's like a lot of research that you can do, but realistically, it just pull it up. Like, we knew our cogs. And so we were basing a lot of this on our cogs and then figuring out willingness to pay. I mean, there's a ton of studies that are done on this, but realistically, it's just, you got to see what people are willing to pay for your product.
and so you've um
you no longer use OpenAI underneath and you've deployed your own fine-tuned models running on Grok. What was the rationale for the shift? And for someone who doesn't know any of those, what those words mean, can you walk through how that decision was made?
Yeah, so we can use OpenAI under the hood. I want to clarify that. Like, we're not exclusively on fine tunes. But what we found is for some of our customers, they really cared about a few things, which is both latency and then conversational accuracy to their scripts. And
Mhm.
so for those customers, especially those who are doing a lot of volume, it actually just made sense for us to, fine tune a model that was really good at what we had there. So while we can use OpenAI, and while a lot of our customers do use like something like OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever underneath the hood, we found that for some customers we could get better results using a fine-tuned model, such as a Llama or Quen or whatever. And then Grok is a very fast inference hardware, so running it on Grok really helped us a lot to be able to make sure that we could guarantee that low latency response.
And did Grok build something specifically for you for fine tuning? I read somewhere that they deployed some hot swapping tech. What was that like, and how did you end up pulling that off?
Yeah, so we were their first LoRa fine tunes. So they launched LoRa fine tuning, and we were the first case study, first customers to have that. So we had it quite a few months before it was actually launched, and we were one of the use cases that they had used to like beta test and get the optimization out. So yeah, a LoRa fine tune is an adapter on top of just an adapter to customize the parameters to output what you want to.
And so, how did you end up getting into that program? Was there a call for this, or?
Yeah, we did this with one of the companies that I actually invested in, Mai Tai, and we had, they had been working with Grok, they've been partners with them, and so we were introduced through them, and then that was how we had kind of got all this introduction and made it happen.
What does Might I do?
I think that they are not entirely sure now. I think they may have pivoted, but previously at the time they were doing like fine tuning assistance for models, and we're like hosting their own kind of models on these fast inference platforms.
And so you invest as well, like angel or super early.
Yeah, just a small angel. So they were in our YC batch, and so it's not uncommon for founders to invest in each other's startups in the batch.
And so between the customers who are using your fine-tuned version or for whom you are deploying the fine-tuned models, are there specific use cases that those are better for? What gave you conviction to move in that direction?
So a fine-tuned model makes a lot of sense when you say, "Hey, here's the task that I want you to do, and I want you to do it really well, and I want you to be fast to achieve." Right?
Mhm.
Like when you have like a well-defined process, and you want to be fast, and you want it to be cost efficient, that's really where it does well. Voice is a natural place for this to live because latency is so important. Uh, the amount of intelligence that you need to get out of like the reason why voice to voice is not taken off is because what they do is they create a compressed model um, that kind of like talks. It's a faster model, right? So it doesn't have the deep intelligence that like a thinking model would, right? And so what you have to do is you have to very carefully design your architecture to get that same level of intelligence in a conversation without having the ability to like have that additional latency of the thinking.
And so you've already raised Series A, I think, recently, and three of your customers ended up signing checks. Like, how did that happen? Did you seek them? Did they seek you in terms of investment?
Yeah, so I mean, we just have a really build really good relationships with them, and then also like I think they evaluated all the providers on the market and had very high confidence that this was the right way to solve the problem. So we didn't really come to them. It was more of like one of these things where we're raising money, and a lot of them were like, "Hey, or conversation went. Whenever you raise your next round, we want to be involved, right?" Like that's how it went. More so than like we didn't really reach out to them and being like, "Hey, do you want to invest money?" It was more of like, "Hey, we know that this is going to work. We are very convinced that like you're going to be on the rocket ship, and we want to be a part of that." So it's independent of like it doesn't help. It doesn't drive any like direction of the company other
Mm.
than literally just they thought that we were going to be successful, and so they wanted to put in money.
Yeah, that makes sense because when customers usually put money, it could impact directions, but I guess you've already had that
Yeah, I mean,
conversation.
they don't have like a board seat or anything, and it was minority stakeholder control. It was literally, and I told them this, and I was like, "Hey guys, this is not. If you want preferential treatment, like pay us more in revenue. Don't investment is not a path to that. That's because you want to get on the rocket ship." And our round was oversubscribed anyway, so I was like, I will push some people out so our customers can get in because, I like I like that relationship, and I want them to be successful as they are.
So you've been publicly critical about vertical AI. You've had your big wins in insurance as well. That's kind of vertical. Where do you see Phonely fitting in? Is it a more of a horizontal tech or a vertical tech?
Yeah, I mean, we're still more horizontal from a use case. Like I said, I think my beef with like vertical AI is like more of it's like a different type of thing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with like having a vertical AI, but you should probably build more. So like it should be a vertical automations platform, and what should just be a channel. That's makes a lot of sense for a certain type of use case and a certain type of business model. But there's a lot of businesses out there that doesn't make sense to, right? They're looking for the best voice AI system. And it turns out you can't build the best voice AI system, or, when you're building like a bunch of other things. And so we really set out to say like, hey, what are the problems that our customers actually want solved? And if we were to build that like vertical AI solution, what we'd have had to do is like said no to customers in different verticals and different domains, and that just didn't make sense to me. Like, it didn't make sense to me that we have like all of our customers that are kind of wanting the same type of platform and the same type of solution in different verticals to say like, okay, well, we're just going to ignore all of you and we're just going to focus on one. But I'm like, you guys are both asking for the same thing. It's not a vertical specific type of a problem.
Yeah, maybe it's also probably the use case you have is fairly horizontal. So it does make sense. There might be use cases where it is not as horizontally applicable as a tech. And so you're going from 25 people to presumably whatever 16 million hiring looks like. Are there already organizational changes you're seeing or making? And do you have any, like, what are some of the plans you have to tackle those organizational changes?
Yeah, I mean, big recruiting effort. Obviously, like our go-to-market team is getting much, much bigger because previously it was just me, and now it's going to be a large team of account executives, SDRs, growth marketing people. So organizational changes. I mean, I think that they're arising as we come up the works. Realistically, it's just like doubling down on what we do really well, and then expanding to get our name out there as much as we can.
And so the dominant narrative right now is, AI models are getting better, but you've said this publicly. You think AI is tapering off. The rate of improvement is slowing down. Why do you think so? And how are you trying to tackle that problem?
Like AI models are getting very good at some use cases. Like I said that maybe 3 to 6 months ago, something like that, where I said, hey, AI models are kind of tapering off. And I think when what I was saying is like talking very specifically to our use case, and I still do see that, where it's like we're not getting 10x better performance out of the models getting better. Like it just the performance is not improving that much in terms of intelligence, in terms of solving the problems that we're trying to solve. If I say like, okay, well, I plug in like a GPT-5, what's happening is models are getting better at specific tasks. So if you look at coding and you look at Anthropic and how Claude Code has changed the way that we write code, it's getting much better there, right? And that's because they're optimizing for specific things and specific tasks. And I so like when I say I think there is still a lot of improvement that's being done when it comes to like what folks like Claude have been able to do and pump out. But I think that there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think that's the thing to get across is like just because a model's great at coding doesn't mean that we're at AGI. It doesn't mean that we're at the best things in sliced bread. It just means that models are getting better. They're getting better at specific tasks.
Given that right now you are the sole marketer, what's your marketing AI stack?
Right now,
Yeah.
marketing AI stack, honestly, not too much. It's me going on LinkedIn and posting around like what I think. Like I have an open claw that I've trained on like my contacts and I say, hey, like I'm looking to put this post out. But I've really struggled. Like, I have a high bar of quality and a lot of times even though it has reference and context, it's like I still want to put my own personal touch on it. So I don't really have a great one other than a lot of it's just like connecting tools together, integrating with OpenClaw so I can understand analytics quickly and we use Looker Studio and stuff like that. But I don't have a great answer to that, unfortunately.
And so how long have you been writing on LinkedIn and what's the experience been so far?
I think basically since we started only, I've been posting on LinkedIn. I think around the time that we got into YC. My experience so far, I mean, when you post on LinkedIn, you die a little inside every single time. I think that's just the part of the what comes with the territory. But overall, I've been able to build like a small audience that I think is pretty engaged and interested in what we do. And I really just like to post. I try to just tell as much of the story from the way that I feel it as I can. I don't really view it as like a big acquisition channel for us. People hear about us, whatever, but like I just view it as a way for me to say like, hey, this is like an expression of what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and what it's kind of like to build a company from nothing, from a founder that has gone through YC and, kind of like raised a Series A, like gone through the hoops of it. So that's at least what I try to do.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Still early, so yeah, makes sense. And like, what are, let's say, top three things that you took away from the YC experience?
I think the biggest thing is like, it's really helpful to have somebody that's have other people building around you.
Hmm.
That's a double thing that you can have is a group of people that you respect, you like, and they're also building. The other thing is, still got to do it. You got to do the work. It doesn't matter if you go through YC. It doesn't matter if you raise a bunch of money. Like none of that really matters. Like the work still has to be done. Your problems are just not solved because you've hit some milestone. I think that's a big one. Yeah. And then I think the other one is just keep going and don't quit.
I'm sure there are obviously post-raise challenges that come with trying to deploy capital. But apart from that, what are some of the current challenges?
Right now, it's all around recruiting and hiring. So how do you find good people at scale and quickly?
And so, what does your hiring process look like right now?
Yeah, it depends on the role a little bit, right? But there's kind of a few hoops that we'll want people to jump through. The first one is you have the background, you have the experience, what we're looking for, right? That filters out a decent amount of candidates. You do have those things. Then the next thing that we're going to look at is, do you have the right characteristics to make this work if only, which is not just been in a corporate job and really good at pressing clocking in, clocking out, but how do you respond when things don't go well or things change or, this is a startup, it's a different environment to a lot of people. So looking for folks that have that. And then the third thing is really just looking for culture fits, right? We have a pretty unique culture here at our company. And it's really important for me to like, it's one of the most motivating things that I have is I like the people that I work with. And that's been the best part about doing what we do, especially recently, is having just a really awesome group of people to experience it with. And like this weekend, we biked 750 miles from San Francisco to LA, and it was with all people on my team. And to have a group of people that can come together and like do some crazy extreme kind of event, have a great time together, camp out, like do all of that and everyone be game. I think that's a really cool experience and hard to find people to fit all those boxes.
And what's the most pressing role you're hiring for right now?
We've got a few, but sales, go to market type of roles are the big one for us. And customer success. That's another one.
The best hire signal you've seen that has nothing you know, you have to hire this person that has nothing to do with resume.
Nothing to do with resume. Yeah. Well, depends on how you define resume, but the thing I'd like to look for is find somebody that's just top 1% at something. I believe that that's transferable. I find that like we find people that are really good at one thing and that have excelled to be the top of their field. They have some sort of competitive bit to them in which they have like an internal bar. I think that there's a lot of people out there that don't have a high bar for themselves and a high bar for their performance. And so when you find somebody that has a high bar for themselves and expectations of themselves, and you put them in an environment in which, that they can chase after and try to get over that bar, you end up with a really good employee.
Worst advice you got from a VC that you followed?
Worst advice I got from a VC. I remember there's been a lot of bad conversations with VCs. I think one of my least favorite conversations I had with VC was a VC in Melbourne, actually. They were really trying to get us to take an investment.
Hmm.
They really wanted to invest in our company. And so they were basically trying in some way to bully us and say, like, all these other companies have raised money and you haven't raised money yet. Therefore, you need to take my money now. And they were looking for a big chunk of the company. And this was pre YC. And I remember that conversation like really bothered me
Hmm.
because I was like, well, there's not that. This was 2 years ago, right? So imagine 2 years ago, people being like, "You're already too late in the voice AI game. Like you're way too late. These companies they've raised money. You're like that's such a dumb argument,
Yeah.
right? Because probably 2 years from now, there's going to be new voice AI startups.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the worst thing. I remember that being bothered by that until for like a week, and then I was like, we got into YC, and I was like, "See ya, dude." Like, I was very happy to send that rejection to them.
That's a good angle by them, though, for someone who's a first time founder pressuring them like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, if you're a founder, don't let VCs pressure you into anything. They're trying to they're not selling, they're buying, So they're not giving you something, they're taking your equity.
And there's always room for, like, a lot of founders do get rushed into either raising or pushing a product out because of the competition, but that's not the right way. There's no set timeline. You're not going to be late. And so, what does your dad think about Phonely now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been for a while, and most people, I think everybody, was like happy that I was doing something, and they thought that I was going to be successful. But I don't think that anybody had predicted how fast we would grow and how quickly this would all happen. So they're pretty proud. They're impressed. They're like, go. They're like, just we can't really help anymore, but like, we'll cheer you on type of a deal.
And he's still your customer, or did you guys finally deploy this?
He actually sold his practice. So he sold his practice in, yeah, around the time that we were starting it. And so that was like to corporate. And we tried to sell with them for a bit, but then we kind of like moved out of the veterinary space and ended up like it's just not like a big enough opportunity for us really.
A thread I missed was Spoke Sound. That was a hardware startup. How did you switch from hardware to, like, software? What are some of the things you liked about running a hardware company?
Yeah. What I like about running a hardware company is that your challenge is very easy. What do I mean by that? Like in a startup, a lot of what a startup is, it's about finding a hard problem to solve.
Right.
Like once you find a hard problem to solve that people actually want solved, like you're in a really good spot, right? But it's actually really hard to find a hard problem. And so whenever we come across something and we're like, that's going to be really hard to solve, we're like, good, that's awesome because that means that other people aren't going to want to solve it and they're going to want to pay somebody to solve it. And so this notion of people starting software companies and being like, I'm just going to start it really quickly and make a bunch of money off of it because it's easy is the wrong notion to start. You should be looking for something that's like, oh, this is a hard problem to solve. This is ugly. I don't want to solve it. This is going to suck. Then you should do that thing because that's what's going to end up paying you money. And so with hardware, your problem is hard. You know the hard problem, which is like, how the heck do I make a hardware product actually work? Because you have very long iteration cycles. It's expensive. You have a lot of logistics to coordinate to even get a product working. Whereas software, it's like you get on Cloud Code and 20 minutes later, you got something up and running. And so I think that like for what I liked about it was the ability, the thing was like, okay, well, if I do this, here's the hard part of it, right? The distribution, the other things come easy. I think the parts I didn't like about it was yes, it was slow. I couldn't iterate very fast. And then two, the biggest reason I didn't feel like I was solving a problem that really existed in the world, and that's why I ultimately left because I really wanted to solve a problem. And I was like, I'm building a nice to have, and I didn't like that. And so had I been working on something where I was solving a real problem, I would have continued on it, I'm sure. And that was just that was just ignorance on my first start. Like I just didn't know, right? I was like, oh, you have an
Right.
invention, then you do the invention, So I was like, that's not really. Find a problem, find a hard problem, work on the hard problem that people care about until the problem is solved. Like, that's the new like mental model that I have.
And so for the last, whatever, 2.5 years, a lot of things have worked. What have been some of the epic failures?
I mean, most everything has broken like 6 times, right? It's funny. There's different phases of your startup. For the first like year, it was how the heck do we make an AI even talk, right? And that was a really really hard problem. And like, yeah, you could get to a demo, but to how do I get that to be reliable with 5 nines of uptime? Super, super hard problem because you're relying on a bunch of startups. And these startups are speech providers, LLMs, and they go down all the time. They have latency spikes all the time. So how do we guarantee to our customers that we're going to be up 100% of the time? Really, really hard problem to solve. Took us, yeah, probably a year to get that right. And a lot of our, and like, that's also a really good testament of like, are you solving a good problem? Is we had one point where 30% of our calls were just like outright failing. Like they were middle of conversation. One provider was just sending error codes back, right? They were erroring out. And it was affected about 30% of our calls. And our customers stuck with us and they stayed through that. I was like, that's a real problem if you can have a 30% failure rate and our customers are still paid us full. And so we're like, okay, well, we're really solving the right problem. And now we've got tons of systems monitoring. We've got a big team that works on that. A big QA team as well to like kind of solve all those things. But say that was one of the hardest parts. And now the hard part's like, well, how the heck do we scale? How do we double, triple, quadruple our team size to get the growth targets that we're looking for to become, what we want to be in a few years? So just different types of problems.
Yeah, once you start adding people, yeah, it becomes a lot more complicated. 25 is still sizable. Um, do you have any thoughts on how you're going to design the organization so far, or you're playing it by the ear?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of like becomes one of these things where at least what's worked is you have ICs until you get to the point in which you can't manage something, and then you turn it over to you find somebody to fill that role, right? So that's been the way that worked really well. That's working for us is because otherwise, if you try to like bring in a bunch of senior leaders and executives and do all this stuff, at least from what we've seen and what my founder friends tell me is what happens is you kind of like like you don't know how to evaluate somebody. So you lose
Nice.
control a bit of like where the organization is going. Right. So it's like walking that fine line of saying like, okay, I need to have a little bit of a taste in what's actually happening. And I also need to have experience to come in and, build on top of that. But I think that just like blindly hiring a bunch of people pointing at and saying like, okay, go figure it out. I've seen a lot of founder friends get burned on that.
All right, last question. How can people reach you, and where should people follow you and know more about Phonely?
Yeah, for sure. You can head to phonely.ai. If you want to check our product out, you'll press the button you can press and talk to Phonely right there. The other ways you can learn about us is going to our LinkedIn. We have a pretty active one. We're using Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff set up, but go to our website or go to my LinkedIn, Will, and my last name is Bodewes, spelled Bodewes, and I'll be joining there.
Well, thanks for taking the time. It was a pleasure having you here, and I wish you all the best.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. See you in the next episode.